Right on in here. Right in here.
Ready?
Ready, Chuck.
Ready.
We'll get one more. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Did you know he was my neighbor in next door?
That's why you knew his name was Chuck.
We all have our crosses to bear. Thank you, Robert. Thank you.
You can have it.
You bet.
Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, before Mr. Brightweiser leaves, because he probably doesn't want to stay for the rest of the scintillating meeting, I just want to say that you are really that exemplary citizen who relentlessly pursues this quality of life that we so proudly display as our logo, and have meant a great deal in providing these worthwhile project-based collaborations. And I know you humbly say it isn't you, but you're just everywhere, from Communities in Bloom to the Choose Well Champion to the HEAL Coalition, the Healthy Eating and Living Coalition, to the Strathmore Prevents Cancer, to the other many, many things you've done. And this community owes you a deep debt of gratitude, and I thank you so much.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you, Robert. And accolades to the town, too, who have become so involved in walking and taking part in activities all around town. And I know many of us can't wait for that indoor sports center to be open so we can move our walking into the inside. Our next delegation is the Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Carrier. Lawrence, welcome.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Lawrence, and I'm the Executive Director of the Strathmore District Chamber of Commerce. Since I was not aware that wasn't on the agenda tonight, and this was something I set up with Jennifer months ago, undoubtedly my fault, so I apologize. I must have messed something up there. I apologize. I'm not going to go into this because it was just my prepared thing, and it might take too long, so I will just take as little time as I possibly can. First of all, I'd like to thank Council and the town for their continued support of the Chamber. Through lending us Councillor Sobel as one of our directors. He is definitely an asset and a good man to have on hand. And then, of course, the what's the thing I'm thinking of here? The business licenses. Yes, the business licenses and the funding that we receive every year. I just want to give this is our final quarterly report of the year, and what we're doing right now, we're actually quite excited for 2010. 2010, I've discovered, is our 10th year, actually, since we've been registered as a nonprofit in town. So we're going to say it's our 10th year in existence, as far as we know. 2019? Yeah, 2019, sorry, not 2018, 2019. So we're celebrating next year as our, what would you call it? What's the 10th year anniversary anyway? So we're excited about that. We're also excited about, in August, we started doing some strategic planning. And what we did in that strategic planning, it wasn't the plan at the time, but we kind of took 2 steps back and realized we got to kind of slow the horses down here and see where we're going and move forward and really plan where we're going forward. And since we've done that, we've actually just today finished up our last meeting. We've been working with Community Futures on this strategic planning, and we've been dedicating a portion of our meeting in the last 4 months to strategic planning, and that's what we've done. And today was our last day with Community Futures. We now have our plan in place, loosely, and we're going to be charging forward now with our committees that are going to be taking over and moving forward. So it's just in perfect time for the new year as well. So some of the things that we're looking on doing in the new year is we want to increase our membership, of course. Our membership right now, according to the Alberta Economic Dashboard, I think it's in Strathmore, there's approximately 500, a little less than 500 businesses registered within the town of Strathmore. We've got approximately 90 members, which is around 19% of businesses in town are actually members of the Chamber of Commerce, which is actually not a bad number, but we want to bump that up a bit. And one of the things we're doing in to get bumping that number up is we're starting to a program of, we've decided to call it, just today we decided to call it Member Advantages, which is kind of a member-to-member, member-to-member program where we're going to be offering discounts. We're going to be talking to members. We've already got 3 members. We've got one already set up with the 105.4 More Country. 104.5 More Country is offering chamber members 15% off of a certain type of advertising with them. So, and we're going after more. We've got a few that are just in the fire right now. We haven't finished them up. And then as Councillor Sobel and a few of us were discussing today, we really want to boost that up because we want to give people a reason to join. And so we're doing that, and we're finding it more, the more we have that's local here to Strathmore, the more, of course, it's going to attract people, we think. And so moving forward into that, we're pretty excited for the new year. And we've also just started to set up a membership software, membership management software, which we haven't had. It's been mostly just Excel and QuickBooks, which is not the best membership. As I stand here today, I can't tell you the exact number of members we have because I don't know that. I know it's around 90. But once we get this thing set up, we will have those numbers, and we'll be able to do more reporting and stuff on our members and stuff. So we're really looking forward to that, and it's going to help me in the office to really it's going to automate a lot of the daily processes and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it. Other than that, we're just excited again. I'm just very, and I shouldn't say me, the whole chamber is very grateful for all the help and continued support that we get from the town. When I first started as the executive director in January, I had to make some contacts in town here. I had no idea what I was doing, and everybody that I spoke to was very courteous and kind and patient with me, and I was very appreciative of that, and still am to this day. And again, it's always nice to have, we really appreciate having one of the councillors on board because, of course, with anything that comes to town, and we have Bob there to help us out. So very grateful, and I will let you go on. There's many more people here who were actually on the agenda, so I'll let them get to it.
Thank you, Lawrence. Are there any questions from council? Thank you for your presentation and best of luck in 2019. At this time, I would like to open the first public hearing, the public hearing of council pertaining to bylaw number 18-20.
Your worship,
Sorry.
perhaps a motion to go into to recess this meeting.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to recess the public meeting?
I would move to
Councillor
recess
Peterson.
this public meeting, Your Worship.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? Thank you, and the motion is carried. So I'll now open the public hearing for bylaw number 18-20. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter 6, Amendment thereto. I hereby declare the public hearing relating to bylaw number 18-20 now open at 7:25. Can we have a motion to adopt the public hearing agenda? Councillor Peterson?
Yes, I move.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 1820 proposes to redesignate 4 parcels of land known as Northwest 11 2425, west of the 4th Meridian. The parcels are proposed to be changed from urban reserve and light industrial to a combination of highway, commercial, and public service district. Bylaw 1820 was published in the Strathmore Times on November 16th and November 23rd, 2018.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. The following rules of conduct will be followed during the public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point and shall be limited to 3 minutes in length. The order of presentation will be the administration, those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. To date, no letters of submission have been received. Thank you. Does the administration have any comments?
I think that's me.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Thanks, and welcome, Mr. Proctor.
Thanks. Thanks for coming, everybody. So I've got a brief presentation for everybody tonight, about 15 slides. So an application has been received to redesignate 4 parcels south of Highway 1. This land is described as Northwest 11 2425 west of the 4th Meridian. These 4 parcels are proposed to change from urban reserve and light industrial to commercial highway and public service. Just to give a map of the land that we're talking about here tonight, those are our 4 parcels that we're talking about. They're all south of Highway 1, kind of down near Tina's, no frills there. So to give kind of a current snapshot of what the land use looks like currently, this is what exists there. That gray is urban reserve district, the pink is commercial highway district, and the purple is light industrial district. And if we're granted favorable decision tonight, this is what it would look like if the zoning passes. We can see that the pink kind of fits in with the other pink, and there is some the colors do match, and we think that this land use is appropriate for this area. So I'm going to go into my planning rationale. Staff support this application. Prior to any development permit applications on this land being submitted, we need an appropriate land use district first. The urban reserve district, the current zoning, that gray on the map, was intended for future urban development. It's a holding zone, and we should be redesignating these parcels so we can take steps toward development. We think highway commercial is a suitable land use district for these lands. They're adjacent to other commercial highway lands, as we saw on that map. They're kind of part of that Trans-Canada corridor area, and that's that strip of commercial highway land that runs east-west through Strathmore along Highway 1. The community, we think, will benefit from having these lands as commercial highway versus leaving them as urban reserve lands. We can also hold commercial highway lands to a higher design standard than we can light industrial lands. And we see this as an opportunity to fit in with one of Council's strategic priorities, and that's the beautification of Highway 1 corridor. Having these lands as highway commercial, we can hold them to a higher standard. To get into, sometimes we receive a concept whenever we talk about redesignations. This is a current concept for one of the parcels, which is a joint use WID and Marigold headquarters building. We're not making a decision on the building today, but we just want to include the concept to kind of give council the idea of what kind of form and what kind of project that you could get on these lands with the commercial highway designation. So this is just a kind of a concept site plan for the new headquarters building. Okay, so I touched on that first point. So yeah, we're proposing a decision, on the underlying land use, which dictates the type and the use and the form. Essentially, what box of Lego bricks do we have to play with? If supported, we'll have the box of commercial highway and public service Lego bricks to play with, essentially, is another way of saying this. Civic Works, Marigold, and WID hosted an open house on September 13th. They invited the community to see the proposal. There were some folks in the audience to help answer questions and talk about the proposal. There were some surveys and questionnaires handed out. There was a little bit of public engagement there. Just a photo from the evening and kind of a snapshot of the timeline for the public engagement that occurred for this application. We have August, things started in August of 2018, moved through September, and continued through October. These were just some of the generalized feedback that we received from that open house. We received a lot of comments and little notes on the comment sheet. Overall positive. We did receive some kind of concerns and some notes from folks in Glenwood. That's the residential area. Sorry, I'll go back. That's the residential area north of the proposed joint use headquarters site. And we thank folks for coming to that open house and submitting that feedback. We'll be able to use some of that feedback in the subsequent development permit process to ensure that these comments are addressed. And I've included the full public engagement report along with your report. I've just whited out everybody's names to keep them anonymous. So to address these concerns in the next stage of development permit application of keeping this kind of a quieter residential neighborhood, we're proposing some vegetation buffering with trees and other stuff like that. And we look forward to the next steps of development, which would be after land use and development permit application, which they'd go through my department, and followed by a building permit. So with that said, subject to the information given at the public hearing tonight, we're recommending second and third reading for bylaw 18-20. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Proctor. Is there anyone present who supports the bylaw who wishes to speak now? Good evening, and if you would, yes, if you wouldn't mind, David, when you step to the microphone, just introduce yourself. That would be perfect. Thank you, and welcome.
Thank you.
Dave McAllister, General Manager at the Western Irrigation District. Your Worship and Council, I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to address the rezoning and the redesignation. really, it comes down to three things, what this provides the two organizations, what this provides the town, and what this provides our existing neighbors in Glenwood, because, it's a parcel we already own, and we're interested in the longer term. So, just a bit of background, the history of the WID is inextricably linked with Strathmore. We're coming up on our 75th anniversary next year. In terms of the two presenters you saw as delegations, we provide green space in town for the walking. We're members of the chamber, and we participate actively in the local community. And we want to do so for the next 75 years. And this project is an opportunity for that to happen for us. Working collaboratively with Marigold Library System will enable significant cost reductions in locating our headquarters here in Strathmore and continuing to employ, between 30 and 35 staff, the majority of whom live in Strathmore. The benefits for the community, we talked about the public space dedication. That's going to be dedicated for the town. The town will be able to decide and take in the feedback that it's heard from the community as to what that will look like, and we'll be very supportive of that. It also is the first domino in the development to the south of the highway in terms of those industrial lands, the highway commercial. We're a significant landowner in that area, and securing the zoning on the remaining parcels will really kick off that process. And, for the residents of Glenwood, you're our neighbors now. We want to continue to be a good neighbor, and we want to take in the feedback that we heard at the open house. We've incorporated it into our design, and really looking at having that screening that's been noted before between our site and the north, enhancing the vegetation. And really, when that space is dedicated, it will really be the first large-scale dedicated green space that will be owned by the town south of the highway. So there's that benefit as well. You'll hear from our counterparts at Marigold, who will delve into their rationale behind the project. But really, it is about a partnership between two community-focused organizations that really want and will benefit over the long term, as well as the town will, from this project. And then we have our consultants at Civic Works to speak to some of the details that we've seen at the open house, and more in-depth on the proposal. So I thank you for your time tonight, and appreciate the opportunity to address you. And would be glad to answer any questions should they come up.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Getz is coming forward. I believe you're with the Marigold Group.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of council, thanks for hearing us today. I am used to that, Your Worship. Sorry. I've been warned, and David went first so he could steal most of my thunder, so I didn't take too long. It's well planned. Marigold Library System has been in Strathmore for the past 37 years. We're very similar to WID. We're a long-term community-based organization for the benefit of the community. We're a not-for-profit organization, and we're out of space. Many of you have been in our building, some people many more times than one. And we virtually need to double our space. And so we initially consulted with realtors, and were looking for space, and ended up speaking with WID, who were also looking at building a new headquarters. And we started talking about what things we could do together, and came up with the idea of a co-located space, which would be economically more viable for both of us in terms of saving. We are excited about the idea of putting a project south of the highway, which will provide, we think, a level of beautification that will be a good example for others in the area. We think we're going to be very good neighbors to the folks in Glenwood. Not only are we committed to maintaining and enhancing that vegetative buffer that is at the north end of the property we're looking to develop, and at the south end of Glenwood, our concept at this stage is to put the building together so that all of the loading bays are on the south side, so the building itself will buffer Glenwood from any noise. As well, all the entrances and exits will be towards the south end of the property, keeping any traffic concerns that Glenwood has in terms of our operations away from them, keeping the noise down. We think that the redesignation as commercial highway of that particular property, in conjunction with the public use designation of what's going to be a green space for the benefit of the community, is in keeping with the neighborhood, as it were, is the beginnings of further development along that area that's perhaps more in the highway commercial zone or light of things than in the light industrial. So we think we're going to be quiet neighbors and good neighbors, and we think that that's an appropriate designation. As I say, we've got two public service organizations who have been good neighbors and members of this community for many, many years, and we want to be here for many, many more years. And this is a way for us economically both to be able to do that and to put a project together that we're both going to be proud of for a long time. That's really what I have, folks, unless you have a question. I think in terms of details, I think the folks from Civics Works can provide more detail than I can, certainly. Thanks for your ear.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else speaking in favor? Thank you. If you wouldn't mind again introducing yourself as you come forward.
Can do. Your worship and members of council, my name is Christy Bunder. I'm a principal and senior planner with Civic Works. I would like to say it's just been our privilege to work with the WID and the Marigold Library in this application. I think, it's also want to shout out to Chuck Proctor, who's been really accommodating with us through this process, allowed us to have the open house at the town hall. And this has been, very, very positive and very helpful throughout this process. And I will thank Mr. Proctor for that as well. I don't want to be repetitive, but I will say, our engagement process was fairly in-depth. We hand-delivered about 43 postcards to the neighbors, outlining where they could get the information and how they could participate in this process through a respectful engagement that we always try to establish. We had our open house here at the town offices, which we're greatly appreciative of. We did advertise in 2 editions of the Strathmore Times. Additionally, we had exit surveys, and we had the boards online for people to view if they could not attend the open house. We had a dedicated engagement line, which we always do, so people could phone us or they could email us. They could do whatever they needed to do in order to express their comments and suggestions with regard to this application. And some of those suggestions will inform the built form outcome, which is, I think I'll just skip to right now. So one of the things that was discussed was that there be a vegetative buffer to the north, adjacent to the Glenwood community. And so you can see kind of in the existing trees, we've cross-hatched where we would have a vegetative buffer to the north. That's, I think, a very positive addition. It'll also help sound attenuate in the long term all of the activities that would be going on in this facility. We also had a suggestion not to access Pine Road. I don't think that's possible, but we can certainly move that and discuss relocating that access to a more favorable location if there is one. That is a very well-lit street. I was there again this evening, and No Frills is quite a bright box. And I think, we've got 2-3 street lights on that side already and an electrical pedestal that we need to work around. So I think it's possible for us to revise that access location. Our choice in putting it there was to have a direct line of sight to the front door to the Marigold Library, which is the one that would receive a greatest amount of visitors. We also wanted to have a direct line of sight to the pathway system so that people could see, oh, I see that pathway system, I can walk to it, it's connected to the front door of the Marigold Library, and it's actually a very safe access location for me to get onto that pathway system. So there were some intentional design choices around where that access location is. Additionally, we tried to set a standard for parking lots and access locations and turning movements and a concept plan. We have a bioswale, and many of these parking spaces have direct accesses to sidewalks and planting. So we actually took our cue there from Heritage Park. I don't know if you've been there, but there's a massive parking lot but there are desire lines built in that parking lot with regard to where the planting is, where the sidewalks are, and how they lead you to safe places through a parking lot. This, for us, is a very critical consideration. We also have left enough room to buffer every edge here and have just a beautiful site all around. We're excited about it. We're excited about it for the town. We've provided opportunities for this building to grow within its envelope, and we couldn't be more pleased to be representing this project this evening. I'm certainly welcome and able to take your questions.
Thank you. We have a time period at the very end where
Okay, thank you very
councillors may
much.
ask questions. Thank you. Is there anyone else present who supports the bylaw and wishes to speak? Is there anyone present who opposes the bylaw and who wishes to speak tonight? Seeing none, is there anyone present deemed to be affected by the bylaw who wishes to speak? Thank you. Do councillors have any further questions for any of the presenters? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is for Mr. Proctor. And it's kind of a silly question. But can you tell me what public service district is? What can go on there? What can be put there? I see that there's a lake there, or a pond. So I'm assuming it's...
Absolutely. Thank you, through the chair, Councillor Cox. Thanks for the question. I don't think that's a silly question at all. So public service district, usually is when we own the land. All of our schools are public service districts. Some of our MR, some of our ER is that. A lot of our parks is public service district. So on the map, the proposed public service district there, the west side, is going to be intended for kind of a park. Usually a lot of buildings don't go on public service. They usually remain in a park or vegetative green state. You can have some buildings on that, but I don't think any buildings are planned for these lands. And then that water to that southwest parcel, I believe, is just, again, there's a water body there, and it's just basically a town-held zone usually for all of us at the town. Yep. Yeah, the town is likely going to inherit that parcel later at the subdivision stage. Yep, there's some deferred reserve MR on these parcels. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors? Thank you, Mr. Proctor.
Thank you.
Are there any other further speakers tonight for this? No, thank you. I hereby declare this public hearing for bylaw number 18-20 closed at 7:45 p.m. and will accept a motion to adjourn. Councillor Peterson.
I would move adjournment of the meeting, public hearing for bylaw number 18-20.
Thank you. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to our second public hearing for tonight. This public hearing is held pursuant to the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000, Chapter M-26, and amendments thereto. And I hereby declare the public hearing related to bylaw number 18-25 now open at 7:46 p.m. Can we have a motion to adopt the public hearing agenda? Councillor Cox.
I so move that we adopt the public hearing agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. All in favor? Motion is carried. Legislative Services?
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 1825 proposes to amend the land use bylaw to allow a maximum of one recreational vehicle to be parked on a front driveway or on a parking pad in the front yard of a residential lot containing fewer than 30 dwellings. Bylaw 1825 was published in the Strathmore Times on November 23rd and November 30th, 2018.
Thank you. Oh,
Sorry. Also, Your Worship, we have received one letter of submission.
You'll be reading that in?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. The following rules of conduct again will be followed during the public hearing. Presentation should be brief and to the point, limited to 3 minutes in length. The order of presentation shall be administration, those in favor of the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, any other person deemed to be affected by the bylaw. Council may ask questions of the speakers after each presentation for clarification purposes, and there will be no debating the bylaw. To date, no letters of submission. We have one letter of submission, thank you. I do remember you saying that. Does the administration have any comments?
Yes, Your Worship. Just to reiterate the intent of the bylaw, this bylaw would allow a maximum of one RV to be parked in the front yard of a residence or on a property within a residential district. There is a consideration for once you get above a certain size of apartments, wouldn't be uncommon to have a lay-by or a drop-off or even a parking lot in a fire lane to the front of a building. It certainly would be common an assisted living facility or a facility of that nature. We are proposing that instead of regulating the RV, that we regulate the size, width, and dimensions of a driveway. Currently, we do not regulate that, and that, I think, in the long run, may have greater consequences than trying to regulate the vehicle. Currently, we don't regulate the parking of trailers in a front yard, but we do regulate RVs, and on balance, we tend to get more complaints about the bylaw the way it is rather than the RVs. And last but not least, we're proposing related amendments that would carry over some of the provisions of the existing bylaw.
Thank you. Is there anyone present who supports the bylaw who wishes to speak? If you wouldn't mind stepping forward to the microphone and introducing yourselves.
Hi, I'm Scott Hanishuk. I live in the Glenwood area. Recently, in the last little bit, we purchased an RV trailer and had it sitting in our front drive. And I guess it was opposed to some of our neighbors that they didn't really like it sitting there. So I'm sorry, I just noticed that this was about today, so I'm not very prepared for this, but the amendment does seem adequate. You drive anywhere around Strathmore, and you will see RVs all parked in almost everybody's front yard. So just that I'm for it, so that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And our next speaker, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, my name's Don Rhodes. I live over in Strathaven. I was the gentleman who kind of started this whole action about 14 months ago. I think it was a September meeting of last year, where I had been bothered by the town bylaw officers, and I didn't feel it was right, so I come to council and done a proposal here, and at that point in time, council seemed to be in favor of some changes. There was nothing discussed about actually what the changes were going to be, but I'm in full agreement of having this bylaw here, and as long as the trailers are kept back from the sidewalks a reasonable distance so that nobody's going to walk into a hitch or something like that, and you're not affecting your neighbors, I'm fully in agreement of this new bylaw, and I would like to see it changed as soon as possible. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else present who supports the bylaw and would like to speak? Is there anyone present who opposes the new bylaw who wishes to speak? No one?
Your Worship?
Oh, sorry, you have the letter. Thank
Yes,
you.
Your Worship. Okay. So, Your Worship, we have a letter from Miss Lynn, and I'm sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Hotvet, from 20 Strathmore Lakesway. It reads, I am emailing you a letter as I'm very concerned regarding the above amendment change to the land use bylaw. I was watching the November 7th, 2018 Strathmore Council meeting online, and the sound started cutting in and out just as the fellow was talking about this amendment, so I went to the meeting agenda package and started reading the proposed bylaw changes. I emailed Councillor Bob Sobel about my concerns, and he suggested I prepare and forward a letter to you expressing my concerns and attending the public hearing for bylaw number 1825 on December 5th. I see this as going from a fairly strict bylaw to a total free-for-all. Under discussion of recreational vehicles, page 132, 1C3, a driveway and parking pad must be perpendicular to the roadway so that motor vehicles can be parked perpendicular to the roadway. Should this not be recreational vehicles also, as this whole bylaw is concerning recreational vehicles, not motor vehicles? Then in the draft on bylaw 18-25, section 101.5 CI, perpendicular to a public roadway if the driveway connects to the public roadway. This does not address the fact that the recreational vehicle has to be parked perpendicular to the roadway as well. The part where a recreational vehicle cannot be parked sideways on a driveway has been totally taken out. It is said in the background/context that monitoring the matter of RV parking in a front yard is time-consuming, and enforcement typically has relied on the receipt of a complaint. Why does the town have bylaws then if they are not enforced? This is what the bylaw enforcement officer is, to monitor and control. If this is a constant problem in the summer, doesn't this tell one an issue is here that has to be dealt with? Yet the town wants to let it go and be a bylaw lacking rules, and thus create a chaotic and contentious situation. The proposed amended bylaw says you can put whatever RV you want, whatever size the RV is, in the front yard on a pad year-round. Some people respect bylaws, some don't, and violate them or take them to the limit. I have one neighbor who respects very little, and with the proposed amended bylaw, they will once again have a free-for-all. I have been personally affected by this amendment, as I have a neighbor with a plus 36-foot length and probably 12 feet high motorhome parked across their driveway sideways for the entire summer with 3 pullouts and hookup, and parked to my property line, thereby using my lawn to walk around it. You should have this RV with a photo on file by the bylaw enforcement officer. I reported it under the current bylaw, and the bylaw enforcement officer came out and deemed it also public safety hazard, along with being parked sideways. This parking of this recreational vehicle stopped at this point, approximately July 2018, and never happened for the rest of the summer or fall. I fear this proposed current amendment will have this recreational vehicle back on the driveway sideways. This is like an additional home put in front of our house. I cannot even imagine if everyone on the street did the same thing. It would look like a big mess, and then to allow it year-round is a whole other issue. They are recreational vehicles which people choose to buy as an enjoyment for themselves, and I do not see why this has to wreck the enjoyment for people to live in their homes and have nice yards when there are many storage facilities within minutes of town. Very saddening. Why do they think recreational vehicles take importance over people's personal homes? Other important points regarding this proposed bylaw amendment include: if there was a fire, how do fire rescue vehicles maneuver around a massive recreational vehicle to attack the fire? This is a huge safety issue. Living in a recreational vehicle parked in a residential area has not been addressed, and this does happen. Property values. How does one sell a house when you have a 35-foot camper parked on the driveway? One likely won't. I also do not understand how linking RV parking to lot width and/or maximum allowable driveway widths controls RV parking as suggested in the proposed amended bylaw. How does a bylaw enforcement officer monitor this? This is the first word I have heard regarding this, and I'm wondering if there is any point in going to the public meeting on December 5th, 2018, or should I just try to sell my home now, as I really do not look forward to seeing the coming year repeat itself all over again. Also, they want the bylaw amendment to allow recreational vehicles to park in a residential area 12 months of the year. This is just unacceptable. I was just making this public meeting on December 5th to discuss this amendment 1825 be made more known to the public, as I just came across it by accident. I have included PDFs of the existing bylaw and the proposed bylaw number 1825 and discussion with my various notes throughout. Strathmore is a beautiful town, but I feel that this has the potential to ruin a lovely landscaping. Might as well have sea cans allowed in residential. Regards, Lynn Hatfitt.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. Is there anyone present deemed to be affected by the bylaw who now wishes to speak? Do the councillors have any questions of any of the presenters? Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to speak to Mr. Fisher, please.
Yes.
So I guess the first thing I'll get you to address is just in this letter here, when the person states, "I also do not understand how linking RV parking lot to lot width and or maximum allowable driveway width controls RV parking." Could you just, I guess, talk about if this bylaw is, or if driveways are supposed to do that, and I guess how they would do that if it was the intent?
Well, I think that an RV is one type of motor vehicle. And some people drive RVs as everyday drivers. I mean, cabs on the back of pickup trucks aren't as fashionable as they used to be, but I can remember when Volkswagen Westphalias were very common, even in planning departments. The issue that I see is if we're dealing with unsightly matters, all other things being equal, I think it is far more unsightly to have 5 or 6 pickup trucks parked axle to axle in a front yard because the front yard has been zero-scaped and we do not regulate driveways in the bylaw than having a single RV parked on a concrete driveway. And I didn't bring any photos because this was not an opportune time to take photos this time of year, but I've seen the situation off and on in my 40-year career, and at the end of the day, RV parking may be unattractive to some people. I fully understand that. To some people, parking trailers of any sort in a front yard is unattractive. But currently, we focus solely on RVs, and we don't regulate driveways. So I think in the long run, given that the purpose of a land use bylaw is to control the use and development of lands, controlling the activities of people is not consistent with controlling the use and development of lands. And I would argue that driveways are a bona fide development issues, RVs much less so.
Okay, thank you. And so I guess I'll speak to the driveway portion for a moment. When does a driveway become a driveway? Now, and so if somebody has, let's say a gravel driveway currently and they want to pave it, will that require a development permit?
It's a very good question. The issue that we have, the thing that causes us the grief, is that currently we do not regulate driveways, and that has been, asserted by development officers with some vigor, given the way the bylaw is written. On the other hand, we control access to a roadway. Well, if somebody, whether it's in the downtown or in the suburbs, decides to just run over the curb and park, is it or is it not a driveway? Well, I would argue if vehicles are parked there, given the common dictionary definition of a driveway, I would say that you've installed a driveway without a permit. I don't think we necessarily want to go out of our way looking for issues with people that have gravelled stuff in the past, but we certainly have situations where people have just ripped out 20, 30 feet of curb without authorization, thrown down some gravel and parked. Now, the issue with driveways isn't even so much the aesthetic issue. It's more often than not, when you install a driveway, when having considered surface drainage, you may just be draining all your surface drainage onto the adjacent property, and then you really do have an issue. I mean, most of our lots in new subdivisions, the overwhelming majority are split drainage lots, so they drain from the side to the front and to the back, and typically either a lane or a drainage swale. Well, if you extend the driveway all the way to the property line, you often create a dam, and now you're draining all your surface drainage onto the adjacent property, which is a legitimate and bona fide concern.
So, just to get back to my part of my question, will we require development permits then for people that already have existing driveways that are not concrete at this time?
We could. I don't know if we would actively pursue it, but if it's not, to be honest with you, I haven't thought of that question in any detail, but certainly it's conceivable if it's well established and it's existing, I think we wouldn't. I don't think we would pursue it. But if it looks like it was recent and it hasn't been properly done, I think in the absence of a curb cut, I certainly think we would.
Okay, thank you. And so with regards to the RV parking, do we have any intention of dealing with people, or do we have anything that deals with people that live in RVs outside of a home?
Right now, we don't. Unfortunately, this whole issue was intended to be addressed in a new land use bylaw, and trying to insert this into the existing bylaw was, as is I think quite evident, is a little awkward. I would certainly expect that a new land use bylaw would limit, or could consider limiting, the amount of time people spend living in an RV, whether it's on the street, in the front yard, or in the backyard. Although that's another community standards issue, which is at best peripherally involved with the land use bylaw.
Okay. And are RVs, like, let's say somebody had it parked in the side yard, is it subject to side yard setbacks to get to the point, this person's point about fire hazard?
Well, I'm confident the fire department has ways of getting around vehicles.
Well, I don't even mean so much that, but just like, you know, obviously we have clearances, like distances for fire, you know, between houses.
We try to ensure, like, I think the reason that we want to regulate the where driveways go is so that we implicitly regulate where the vehicle parks. The greatest concern that we have with driveways is extending them all the way to the property line, where in the case of a split drainage lot or a back to front drainage lot, they function as a dam. If we don't allow the driveway to extend all the way to the property line, then we effectively provide some clearance between that. The minimum clearance that we need is approximately a meter to allow whether it's fire or whether it's any other emergency services to get by to the building. This is why we have limitations on projections into a side yard. Where this bylaw tries to limit that issue in particular is where the side yard is shared with the street. So in those cases, you will typically have a property line, and you'll have a side yard of around 3 meters, roughly 10 feet, and typically you'll have a small boulevard between the property line and the back of sidewalk. Well, in a lot of cases, you'll find that the RV is parked partially on the boulevard and partially in the side yard, and then that's something that I think is probably, well, we probably get more complaints about that than we do about parking in the front yard, because it's unattractive, and then there's no place to throw the snow except on the street when you have that situation. So if it's on a side yard shared with the street, we say it should be entirely on your property, and it should be screened with at least a 5-foot fence.
Okay, thank you. And do we currently have any bylaw that prevents somebody from having a sea can or that type of container in their front yard?
I believe the bylaw currently prohibits sea cans in a residential district.
Okay.
Is that?
That's correct. You can have them temporarily in a residential district for up to 7 days. We need a development permit.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm trying to find that section now, and I seem to have lost it, but I believe there was something in the bylaw, in the new bylaw, that deals with the fact that a driveway must be paved.
Yes.
So would that include the back as well?
No, just the driveway connecting to a street, not connected.
And is that specific? Because that.
I mean, we don't normally treat that as a driveway. We treat a driveway as something connecting to a street other than a lane, although I suppose that could be clarified. I mean, the intent of this is to deal with.
No, I appreciate that. But what I'm wondering is if this is inadvertently going to prevent RVs from parking on gravel in the rear.
No, it doesn't. I certainly wasn't the intent.
It does say from the property line and side property.
I'm looking at 103.3C1.
The requirements
within
referred
60
to
of
in
it.
subsection B are as follows. Okay, so B states, in a residential district or on a site containing one or more dwelling units, a maximum of one recreation vehicle is allowed at the following locations, provided the requirements of subsection C are complied with, within 6 meters of a front property line or within 0.6 meters of a side property line. And then the requirements that pertain to that is that the recreational vehicle must be parked on a driveway or a parking pad, and the driveway or parking pad must be surfaced with asphalt, concrete, or paving stone, and must not be surfaced with gravel. So I think it does speak to the front rather than, it certainly wasn't the intent to.
No, I appreciate that. So it's I get the within .6 of the front, but does that, the .6 of a side, does that not
Within
create an issue?
If it's parked within .6 meters of a side property line, if that property line is shared with a public roadway other
Next
than
to
a
a
lane.
Other than a lane.
Other than a lane, which then goes to the point of, if it's on a side yard flanking a street, we want to make sure it's on the property and not on the boulevard.
All right.
And with steps overhanging the sidewalk.
Okay. I had another question for you. So, is your intent to just remove this from the land use bylaw with an opening that, or with a suggestion that anything that deals with this issue should be in the community standards bylaw?
That's certainly one option. I think the overwhelming experience in this area tells me that, in a previous life, I spent the better part of 6 months just dealing with this issue in a 1,100 response survey on RV parking in a front yard. I think if we don't regulate driveways, if we don't regulate their width, with xeriscaping becoming more popular, more prevalent, especially on rental housing, don't be surprised to see 6 pickup trucks parked axle to axle in a front yard running over the curb without a driveway permit, even though there may be a lane at the back. I'm not an advocate of RV parking in a front yard, but I think at the end of the day, I think that is more of a community standards thing than a land use bylaw thing. I would argue that if somebody says I can't do it, well, if it's a matter pursuant to a land use bylaw, I could file an appeal to the Subdivision Development Appeal Board, rather than just dealing with it as a bylaw enforcement matter.
However, you did say that issues regarding residency in a motorhome on a pavement should be in our land use bylaw.
I think that it's not like, I guess the issue in a nutshell is it's because we're allowed to deal with parking in a land use bylaw, the shape and configuration, location of parking lots. It takes it to the next steps and starts dealing with our RV parking and where you can do it, and whether you can live in an RV or not. I certainly think that should be in a community standards bylaw, but if it's council's wish, we could certainly include it in the land use bylaw as an interim measure. It gets into a whole, my neighbor spends.
Well, I don't know that we can have it both ways, though, if it's not going to be
I think the appropriate place to put it is in a community standards bylaw.
And that would be the same for issues pertaining to parking your RV lengthwise across a driveway rather than sideways or perpendicular to the road.
I think so, but here's the issue. The bylaw says you can't park sideways, okay? If it's not perfectly sideways, is it parked sideways? Well, the person who parked it that way is going to say, no, it's not, it's parked askew. Well, if the driveway, like we normally think the driveway is as the frontage, being the width, not the length. Well, if the driveway has a greater frontage than it has a 20-foot depth, then if it's parked sideways, is it parked? Length is normally considered the longer of the dimensions with respect to width, right? Well, if I have a 30-foot driveway and I park it sideways, and then I'm parked along the length, not the width. And, we just get a lot of those kinds of discussions, and they don't end up being particularly helpful, and I don't know if parking a vehicle sideways on a driveway is of any consequence.
Thank you, and just for clarification for myself, if someone's at home watching this and they see this come up later, and depending if we pass this bylaw, you're saying there's still a way to address this by having it come forward in the community standards bylaw?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further speakers for this bylaw? Then I hereby declare this public hearing for bylaw number 18-25 closed at 8:13 PM and will accept a motion to adjourn it. Don't all rush. Councillor Montgomery.
I will move that we adjourn the public hearing for bylaw 18-25.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. You've heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. This brings us back to the public meeting that we recessed for the public hearing, public hearings. And that brings us to item 5, confirmation of minutes, the approval of the regular meeting minutes for November 21st, 2018, item 5.1. Jen, sorry, Ms. Sawatsky, did you have a?
Your worship, I can speak after adoption.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I would move adoption of the regular minutes for November 21st, 2018.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You all heard the motion. All in favor? That motion is carried. Ms. Sawatsky, did you want to speak to your?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just wondering if council would like to move bylaws up to be considered next, as we have a number of individuals waiting for decision on those.
Thank you, Ms. Sawatsky. I think council would be in favor of that. I think that's a good way to make it more efficient, and for the people who are here for those specific bylaws, they can get taken care of right away. So first on our list then, moving the bylaws up would be 10.1, which is now moved up to whatever.
Can we do it by motion? Are you ready?
Do we need,
Do it by
yes,
motion?
oh, sure. Councillor Peterson?
Actually, Councilman.
Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. I will move that council give second reading to bylaw number 18-20.
Do we need to move an amendment to order?
Oh, I see, okay. All right, well then I will move that we amend the agenda and that we accept the amended agenda as amended.
Did you want to amend that?
10.2 forward.
All right,
To bring 10.1 and 10.2 forward in the agenda?
Yes.
Perfect. Ms. Sawatsky, does that help muddy the waters? You've all heard that motion? All in favor? And now we can present the first land use bylaw, amendment bylaw 18-20, Marigold WID.
All right, I will now move that council gives second reading to bylaw number 18-20.
And now that we have a motion for second reading, is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none. Oh, Councillor Peterson? Comment?
Just a comment, Your Worship. I just want to say that I'm very thankful to WID and Civic Works and Marigold for providing the community such great input and coming to this building, and there was tremendous interest, and I was really impressed with the diligence brought to that. And further to that, I'm very appreciative of General Manager McAllister's comments regarding this being the first domino in terms of the planning around that region. And I'm very, very grateful that this is the building or the proposal that's going in, and that it's not an obtrusive process. It is instead a beautiful public space dedication, and I'm very, very grateful that this is the process that we are facing today, and I'm very much in favor of it.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Your Worship. I also want to reiterate how thankful I am that you addressed the concerns of the public, and I think you did an excellent job of addressing every single concern, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Then we have the motion for second reading on the floor. All in favor? Motion is carried. Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Worship. I move that council give third and final reading to bylaw number 18-20.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. You've heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. And my final comment, I would like to commend our staff and administration, as well as the two groups and the contractors, the design company, for your ability to engage the public, to hold the open houses, and to advertise and get people involved in providing input. And I appreciate the respect you've shown to the Glenwood residents to try to deal with their concerns as far as traffic noise and vegetation in the public spaces. So thank you very much. That brings us to item 10.2, which was moved up, Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 18-25. Oh, sorry, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that council give second reading to Land Use Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 18-25.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. And now that we have second reading on the floor, is there any discussion on that motion? Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of comments in regards to some of the information received today. First of all, in regards to the letter from the only letter that we received today, it was disturbing that it would be a suggestion that this was not better advertised, and I know in fact that this was advertised in the Strathmore Times, as well as in our website. We are always looking for ways to improve our communication in this regard, but I think our administration takes public hearings quite seriously, and they are advertised. I just and I know it was on Facebook as well, because I saw it there. It's a difficult thing, but somehow we have to get people aware that these things are happening, and I'm not exactly sure that there's a magic bullet to that. In regards to the issue at hand, a couple of comments came to my attention during the discussions. One was, I recall hearing a number of times that there was certainly more complaints about vehicles parked in driveways than RVs, and the police side of me took over there, and I thought, well, that's probably because they're against the law, and there's not as many parked RVs parked in because of this bylaw, and that's why. So the comment I would make on that is, perhaps we should do something, perhaps to prevent all of these vehicles that might end up being parked on driveways, and once again, that could very well be a community standards issue. And our second speaker, and I apologize, I did not write the name down of that gentleman. The key comment I got from that was, this should happen, we should allow RV parking as long as it does not affect your neighbor. And that, council, is through the mayor, is the issue at hand. Some of these things do affect neighbors, and that's why the bylaw is here in the first place, because it has affected neighbors in the past. I'm torn as to whether or not this is a land use issue or a community standards issue, but I do know that if this bylaw is passed, there will be no regulations dealing with this issue. So. And I'm concerned about that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Mr. Fisher, would I be able to ask you one quick question just before we have the vote on second reading? My question is, this is an idea to move it from land use to community standards. As far as dealing with the issue of RV parking on driveways, that it's better handled there, it's more easily channeled under the land use bylaw?
I think that the way it's currently constructed is not in alignment with the Municipal Government Act. Part 17 of the Municipal Government Act leads with the use and development of land and the development of buildings. There's a whole section on what a land use bylaw may regulate. This is directed as a person shall not that it doesn't say that the owner of a property shall not, it says a person shall not allow the parking of an RV in a front yard. So I think that's directed to all persons, including everybody in this room. And land use bylaws are not normally directed at persons. I think bylaws under Part 7 of the Municipal Government Act can be constructed that way. So I think right off the bat, that's a bit of an issue. If we regulate RV parking in a front yard, we could say an RV must not be parked in a front yard, and then it's directed at the vehicle. I think the bigger question that we have is, what is a reasonable number of vehicles to park in a front yard? And should there be any limits on a driveway? Well, if we don't regulate driveways, I don't know how we can regulate vehicles being parked in a front yard. That's just my practical observation from everyday experience.
Is there, my second part of the question is there enough protection in our community standards bylaw to deal with the idea of RVs parking on?
To my knowledge, there's no provisions in our community standards bylaw dealing with that issue.
So if someone is concerned about this and we pass this bylaw, then if they want to deal with people parking too long on driveways, we would have to revisit the community standards bylaw.
I believe so, yes.
So this issue would not necessarily end where it is tonight. It's going to be coming back probably in a different section. Okay, thank you. Councillor Peterson, Councillor Montgomery, then Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to say that I don't believe that this bylaw amendment is perfect by any means. But, thank you for your work on it, of course. I do take your point, though, that I agree in this, that it's not something that should probably be left in a land use bylaw, especially the way it's kind of currently worded. And so I do support, I guess, the intent of changing how the bylaw works. And I just think that there could be a bit of tuning up of it, and clarification, let's say. So, thank you.
Thank you. I fully appreciate this is far from perfect solution, and I don't think it should be construed as a recommendation by the planning department. It's an issue that I don't know if there's any right or wrong answers to it. There's certainly people who have RVs who like parking them in the front yard, and there's neighbors who don't like it, and it never seems to be entirely resolvable. I've seen some communities try to limit it based on the length of the vehicle. I don't, and yet there's upscale neighborhoods with very large lots that have things the size of a Greyhound bus parked in the side yard, and nobody's complaining about that. So it seems to be almost on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson, then Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Worship. So through the chair, question for administration. Do we have the option to defer this bylaw while and require that administration come back with a revised community standards relevant to the things that we've talked about tonight? And that would be my first question.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council can postpone this matter to a different meeting, and you can direct administration to bring back any changes you want to see in any bylaw, so absolutely for the community standards. That said, if council does not feel comfortable moving this bylaw forward, perhaps council could vote on the bylaw.
Thank you, Worship. So I guess where I'm at is much as Councillor Montgomery stated, although I like the bylaw more than you maybe. I do like this bylaw. I think that it serves a good purpose, but like Councillor Sobel, I certainly heard Mr. Rhodes' concern that there is a compellable reason to bring this forward, but there's an equally compellable reason to make sure that the community standards are revised to reflect it. Is that a reasonable assumption, do you think, Mr. Fisher? I ask in your expertise.
Without addressing the RV, I think the driveways are important. They're important to the proper design and function of our subdivisions. When split drainage lots drain into the neighbor's yard because the driveway was built all the way to the property line. It now functions as a dam. We have a real demonstrable issue. And I think, I try to kind of link the two because I think at the end of the day, that's important. I think the issue of RV parking in a front yard is entirely, I have no opinion on it.
So unfortunately, the bylaw in front of us today is concerning RV parking and driveways.
Yeah.
So, Your Worship, after discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson.
There's
We have
already
a motion on the floor.
We have to vote on it.
Yeah, we have second reading, motion for second reading. Councillor Cox, and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Peterson, just for a moment.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to point out, the letter that we received that opposed this bylaw was written before it was advertised. The date on the letter says November 14th, and she complains that it wasn't anywhere, but both the published bylaw was published on November 23rd and November 30th. So I give her a little bit of credit, she just was too quick. The other thing is that is the only letter or opposition on this bylaw.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson?
Well, Your Worship, we do have a motion on the floor. I'm prepared to vote in favor of this and look to the future to revising our community standards bylaw so that we can deal with the outstanding issues.
Thank you. So we do have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Opposed? So we have one opposed. Councillor Peterson, did you want to now bring a motion to put this off or to table it till a?
Can you table it for a third reading? Or defer it? So I would move, Your Worship, to postpone the bylaw 18-25 until the third meeting in January. I don't have the date before me, but the council meeting in the third week of January. I will make that my first motion. I have a subsequent motion.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, we have a motion on the floor, so you can ask a question.
Administration? Because this is third, do we still, do we have any discussion for it before or after? Like, we can't discuss it any longer, can we? So what's the
Not a
point in
third reading.
deferring it? What would be the point in deferring it if we can't discuss it after?
It can come back amended.
Exactly.
It can come back with amendment.
Your Worship, council may want to ask for more information on the bylaw, or if I think, I know the way Councillor Peterson is going, requesting amendments to the community standards bylaw come forward at the same meeting. Consider both those bylaws before considering the final vote on this one.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So Councillor Peterson has a motion on the floor. You've all heard the motion. All in favor of her motion? And that motion is carried. So this will be, the discussion will be put off, or third reading will be put off to the third council meeting of January, and we will revisit it then and discuss it then. Ms. Sawatsky?
Your Worship, just to be clear for anyone wondering, it'll be the January 23rd regular council meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I have a subsequent motion. My motion is to direct administration to bring back revisions to the community standards bylaw that would reflect the comments and conversation regarding separating RV parking, the issue of RV parking and driveways relevant to the concerns brought forward in this discussion. And I think we could identify them if we had to, but it would be primarily, as Councillor Sobel said, those issues that complicate quality of life.
Thank you. Just to clarify with administration, have you got enough there? Have you got the motion for that? Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Peterson. We have that motion on the floor. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Which brings us to item 6, tabled items. There are no tabled items. Items for administration. 7.1, council committee appointments, which is on page 13. And Ms. Sawatsi, are you speaking to this?
Yes, Your Worship, just briefly. Your Worship, the Nominations Committee has met to review the applications sent in to us from numerous individuals in the community that want to volunteer for our committees. However, the committee needs some more time to make those decisions. So we are requesting that council extend appointments of current committee members to January 1st, 2019.
Thank you. And do you need a motion for that?
Yes, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson? No, Councillor Sobel. Oh, Councillor Sobel. No, Councillor. No, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Montgomery.
I don't want to do it either. I will move that we extend all committee appointments to the end of 2018.
Thank you. You've all heard that motion? All in favor? That motion is carried. Which now brings us to 7.2, folks who've been waiting so long. The Child, Youth, and Family Program Update, which is on page 14 of the agenda package. And Linda and Aya, would you welcome? We'd like to hear your presentation, and thank you for attending tonight.
Okay. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. Before we begin our presentation this evening, we would like to introduce staff from our department that are here tonight.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'd like to introduce members of our team, Brandy Anderson, Danae Allen, and Scott Mulick.
Thank you and welcome.
So we are here this evening to provide an update and to share the process and outcome of an official name change and celebrate program successes.
The first item I'd like to highlight is the vision, mission, goals, and values of the program. It reflects the needs of the community generated through conversations with local professionals and authorities, anecdotal feedback from clients, and sectoral best practices. As you can see, we have a mission statement that describes who we are, what we promise for the community. We have goals that will achieve all the different developmental domains that children and youth need as they grow. Our vision is to help children, youth, and families succeed within their communities, as well as be able to attend programs and supports that will help them through their growth. We have values that bring the community together, develop healthy relationships, promote quality programming, as well as inclusive services for all. We have a little snapshot about what kind of programming we have been doing over the last few months, and that includes some programming for caregivers as well, which has been very well received and very important to the community. We also have a new information and referral program that we're able to bring to families or youth and children that are in need, and we're currently developing a physical location for those information and referral services as well. Next, the Child, Youth, and Family Hub team have collectively developed a charter which will provide direction regarding professional boundaries, how communication flows, and how problems will be solved, providing feedback and working together as a collective. The process allowed thorough and thoughtful conversation and played a significant role as solidifying the objectives and goals of the team as a whole. Staff were consulted and engaged throughout the entire process. Discussion centered around who we are as a service provider, who we need to be to the community, what kinds of services and programs we currently provide, as well as identified needs, trends, and gaps in the community. This charter describes a vision, values, and goals of the team. In the last 3-4 months, we've been extremely busy. We've had many new programs that have supported community children, youth, and families, and there's a little snapshot here for you tonight. The After School Kids Club has been a combination of recreation, art, and community-based programming and has supported over 40 unique children and youth 6 to 12 years of age. Programs such as these provide a safe place for youth to spend time during those crucial after-school hours, develop positive peer relationships, and facilitate new or enhanced skills. The Essential Edibles program has fed 78 unique youth who are aged 12 to 17, and we're looking at a visit of about 6 times per youth, with a total of 519 visits since September. 63 of those children and youth live in Strathmore, and 15 are from rural areas, and 4 are of Indigenous demographic. The Junior Chef program has served over 24 unique youth for 6 to 12 years of age, and they've been able to learn how to cook, how to make healthy choices, and how to relate healthy eating to healthy living, which has been really, really promising for those life skills. Mad Science, we've seen 22 unique youth around that same age group, and we're able to participate in various science experiments, which enhances their academic learning. We've had some teen nights as well for youth 10 to 14 years of age, and we've had 20 unique youth participate in those. Excuse me. And we've facilitated conversations with them, and those topics have included healthy relationships, internet safety, and cyberbullying. Excuse me. It's important to earmark that all the objectives and strategies that were previously presented at council have been completed, aside from 3, which are currently being worked on. That is development and implementation of the youth survey, youth consultation and engagement, and development of a comprehensive strategic direction, including a work plan and communication strategy. Thank you.
And so we wanted to highlight in engagement with community leaders, such as the Wheatland Food Bank, Strathmore Municipal Library, Wheatland Crisis Society, No Frills, Tim Hortons, Aspen Family and Community Network Society, and McDonald's have provided us with an opportunity to enhance the programs and services while still maintaining higher service delivery, while still maintaining existing spending. And the programs and services are built around engaging children, youth, and families and community, offering a variety of programs for different age groups and different demographics. So we're very excited about the positive feedback we are receiving from residents and service providers, and we're happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Councillor Cox and then Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Lots of information. Took me a long time to read it. But I would like if you could give me more on how you are allowing parents that can't afford our programs and what you're doing for them, just so that the public knows that they can still come if they can't afford it and seek some form of help.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question, Councillor Cox. We currently have a subsidy program that does allow a scale of where we can help community members access those programs. So we've been looking at the Canadian statistics and what those averages look like, and we're basing it off of those. I could always provide more information at another time if needed. And if we're still looking at families that are outside of that threshold, we still like to have conversations with them about how we can help and still provide programming to them.
I'm also wondering, do you get to access the Jump Start as well for the after-school program because it has a bit of recreation, or no?
That is correct. Families are able to use Jump Start funding for those programs because of the recreational piece of it.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to add, in addition to that so if a family is accessing programs and services at the hub, is what we're changing the name to, we just don't look at if they need subsidy for the programs and services there. we look all-encompassing. So if they're needing support and subsidy to put their kids in programs, we look at the bigger picture and see what other supports that they need too. So we're just really making sure that we're opening that up and ensuring it's all-encompassing and they're accessing all the supports and services they require.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Montgomery.
Thank you, Worship, and yeah, thank you very much for this report. So one question I have is, how many staff are there under the youth club or the hub as it is now?
We currently have 8 staff members.
Okay. And could you expand on what gaps have been covered with regards to ethnic or cultural diversity?
Sure. So we're doing a few things. As you know, we have an Indigenous liaison and we're working with Knowledge Keeper from Siksika. And so that's where we decided to start because we were able to do some Indigenous engagement. So a Stokini that everybody had met at a council meeting is continuing to work with us. And on a regular basis, she is providing Indigenous programs or services. So either a craft, cooking, or a game or activity, and just having her involvement in that and opening the minds up a little bit differently specifically with that. We're also just looking at trying to do that in the community as a bigger picture, so connecting with those families and community members that aren't necessarily accessing our services, but still educating them and providing them with the opportunity to see things through an Indigenous lens. And as we move into the next year and do our strategic planning, we're going to be looking at different cultural, besides Indigenous, and keep that Indigenous lens, but expand. And then also we've started to have conversations and we'll look at how can we connect more inclusive with children and youth with disabilities, physical and mental health disabilities, and how can we open that up and make sure that we're servicing all people from all demographics and all needs.
Okay, thank you. And just based on that, like what, like in the future, what would that look like as far as like kind of filling gaps with regards to other cultures or ethnicities?
Mm-hmm. And so I think one of the things that, for example, I'm not going to get the name right, but one of the organizations that we're working with is the Immigration Services in the area. I can't remember the
traffic immigration?
yes. Yeah. And so that's one area that we're working with. Also, I think it's important to note when we look at the most recent census, there's a high percentage of new immigrants in our community and that have children. And so we want to be able to see how we can expand that. And I think the interesting thing is the way that the programs are set up here. Whatever the hub can't do, some of it can fall under FCSS, and we work so closely together to be able to fill those gaps. And so I think as we continue to do our needs assessment in the community and with individuals that are accessing our services, we would be able to come back and answer that more effectively.
Okay, thank you. And what are some of the non-traditional partners that can address broader gaps?
Mm-hmm. So I would say some of the business community that we haven't accessed to full extent before, and service clubs, and also the schools in a different way. So one of the things that happened this summer is that the school division sponsored a bunch of students to attend the summer camp. And so one of the things we're doing and looking at expanding specifically to a summer camp is to reach out. We haven't done it yet, but that's one of our goals, is to reach out to some of the service clubs, for example, like the Legion or the Lion, and share information with them and see if they would be interested in sponsoring like one or two, even just one or two kids, right? And so, and then that also complements the people that have a lower income and might not necessarily be able to participate in the program, but then we have some extra spots available. You know, and one of the things that we're really excited about is our relationship with McDonald's and Tim Hortons and continuing to provide that conversation. And then as we do our strategic plan, we really want to make sure that we're connecting with the business community a little bit differently Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to sponsor something, but just to educate them a little bit more about what we're doing and the services that we have, and then hopefully we can eventually get some different type of sponsorship, whatever that might look like.
Okay. Which of the programs that you guys offer are likely to strengthen self-esteem?
So in the new year, we have currently we have established a relationship with the Wheatland Crisis Society, and they're able to come out and do some education sessions with children. So we're looking at 7 to 10 years of age before those teenage years hit, and that they're able to still be molded in a sense. So we're able to bring some character building sessions that can definitely include self-esteem, it can include bullying, it can include positive self-image, and so on.
Okay. And I guess my final question will be, what are some results of the youth consultation and engagement that you guys did?
So we have a lot more work to do on that perspective, absolutely. But the surveys that we have conducted with youth and children and families have been very positive. We've heard a lot of good feedback about how active the kids are, and that they're participating in community events, and that they're definitely learning a lot while they're in programming.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Peterson.
I just want to commend you for the work that you're doing, and the tremendous mindfulness around our youth programming is greatly appreciated by this council. And one of the things that has been talked about in community, not at this council table, but we've heard it in community, and that is the desire of young people in this community to have a voice in an advisory capacity to the municipality. And at some point in time, I know you have a lot on your plate right now, but if that should ever become something that you would like to consider into the future, this council would be open to consideration. And I thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I think that's a great suggestion, and we already started to do some research on youth council, similar to be a senior advisory committee, similar kind of thing. So we're starting to do the research, and what we're hoping to do is be able to bring back our strategic plan, after budget's approved and after we have a little bit more information with our research and some feedback from the community, and be able to bring an update with some of that information in it.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson, and thank you for your presentation. I really liked the idea of looking to service groups to help sponsor young people in your summer camps. I think that can go a long way to making sure that kids don't fall through the cracks, and it helps fund the program as well. So, and individuals, yeah. Yeah, letting individuals sponsor too. Perfect. So thank you. We wish you well in the new year as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7.3, Policy 1806, Council Remuneration Policy. And Jennifer, you're speaking to this, but I just had one question for you. Since this has been approved in the November 21st, 2018 regular council meeting, I'm wondering if, for efficiency purposes, we as a council bring forward the motion to look at it retroactively and decide from there and discuss from there? It's not an amendment, we just didn't deal with it, right?
Exactly, yes, Your Worship.
Okay, so we have the motion, we have the policy was approved at the November 21st meeting, but we did not decide whether the changes that were approved would happen retroactively. So I think what would happen is we would need a motion to possibly have the motion mention that the policy or the payment, the remuneration would be retroactive to January 1st of 2018, and then we would discuss and vote on that motion. I think that's what. Remuneration, yes.
For what?
Not the remuneration for per diems only.
Yes.
Not.
No, not the salary, just the remuneration for per diems only. So we would need a motion to get that on the floor so we could discuss it. Councillor Cox.
Well, I'm going to try. I move that council.
Maybe at the very bottom there, page 23. Might help.
Consider. Oh, okay.
Your worship, would it help if I have one drafted?
Sure,
Would
thank
that
you.
help? Okay, that the amendments made to policy number 1806, the council remuneration policy, this is per diems, at the November 21st, 2018 regular council meeting be made effective as of January 1st, 2018.
Thank you for that.
I move that.
Okay, thank you. And now that we have that motion on the floor, discussion, Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Worship. So while I did vote in favor of the change to policy 1806, because I do believe that, very, very much so, that a council should not restrict a new council from going forward, and because I really want to see good people in these positions, and it appeared that that in some people's cases that they weren't able to work effectively. Having said that, and understanding clearly that we need to attract good people to public office, I don't believe that we can do it retroactively. So I'm saying that I think we have really good people on this council, but I'm not in favor of retroactive payment. I'm not in favor of the application of it to the a budget that couldn't be addressed at the time, and I know that everybody I'm sure says, or lots of people have said to me, must be nice to vote on your own salary, and I can assure them it's not. It's possibly the worst job that you ever have sometimes on a council, and I would like to see elected official salaries determined by a provincially or regionally appointed independent commission. And it's something that I would either like that this council to discuss at a future time, that either we work it through the Growth Management Board somehow, through committees there in the future, or that we work through AUMA to have it done through a provincially appointed independent commission. But the crux of the matter at this point, Your Worship, I don't believe we can attract good people retroactively, and therefore I can't support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Councillor Peterson. I have Councillor Montgomery, then Councillor Sobel.
Councillor Sobel.
Oh, Councillor Sobel, sorry.
Doesn't matter to me. I'm short. I just for just for the record, this was a matter that was pushed to this meeting by Councillor Bauer, and I did speak with Councillor Bauer about it, and my recommendation was that this matter be put off so that she would have an opportunity to speak to it. She is not available to be here today, and just for the record, she did indicate that she had absolutely no issue with this matter being discussed today in her absence. I also informed her at the same time that much like Councillor Peterson, I'm not able to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Montgomery.
I will agree with what's been said by Councillor Peterson and Councillor Bauer, or sorry, Councillor Sobel. Somebody, yeah. I'm not even reading that, so yeah, it's just coming out. And I guess the thing for me is that I'll echo what Councillor Peterson said, and that is that I believe that we, like everybody else in society, we have the right and the ability to choose to work or not to work for a certain compensation. And I believe it's kind of a loophole of this particular job that we have the ability to vote and give ourselves retroactive compensation if we were to choose to do so. And I believe that would be misusing our power because of the fact that nobody else has that ability or that right. And so for that reason, and some more that I won't get into, but I really believe that it's beyond, it would be an abuse of our power in this position to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Your Worship. I also need a little bit of clarification. So the policy was passed on the November 21st. Does that mean it's effective as of November 21st?
That's good.
Okay, well, I think I need more clarification then, because I'm not in support of necessarily going back all the way to January 1st of 2018. But to be fair, I think because it's affecting our wages as of January, then it should be our per diems as of January as well.
I think I'm a little confused as to what you're...
Well, it was passed on November 21st, so for a month and a half, we're affecting a budget that's already been passed. So if you had extra per diems from November 21st to December 31st, if you had 15 days, you could take them. And so part of why we're saying we don't want to make it retroactive to January 1st of 2018, because it'll affect the budget, because it blah, blah, blah. If we have it effective November 21st, we are also doing all of those things. Does that make sense?
No.
For example, let's say
If you can find
from
15
December.
days, if you can find 15 days between now and
Well,
December claim, I will be shocked.
There's more than 20 between November 21st and,
Well, if you claim those in per diems, I will bow down to you. In shock.
and I'm not going to, again, per diems are claimed based on whether or not we as individuals decide to claim them. So what I'm saying is if we're going to make it, per diems need to follow the exact same thing as our salary. Our salaries are changing as of January 1st, 2019, then so should our per diems.
Instead of retroactive?
Yes, so that's...
It's only a month and a bit.
Well, we have,
Yes.
we have a motion on the floor to make it retroactive to January 1st. So if you feel that way, then you would defeat this motion with...
Yep.
Okay, gotcha. I think we're all on the same page. So we have a motion on the floor that I believe you made with the help of administration, so we're good. Do we need to hear the motion again?
No.
No. So we've heard the motion, we've discussed it. All in favor? Opposed? So we have 5 opposed, and the motion is defeated. Thank you, council. That was entertaining, if nothing else. We move on to item 8, committee reports, 8.1, committee meeting minutes, page 32. Do we have anything? Seeing none. Moving on to 8.2, reports. Oh, sorry, thank you.
I would move the minutes of the 3 committees be accepted as information.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. 8.2, reports from councillors from committees on which they sit. Councillor Peterson.
Just to report, Your Worship, the major item. There it goes. Thank you. Evil Matthew Brunner. So, where was I? The only issue on the, Wheatland Housing presents their minutes once they're ratified to this, and the only thing coming up under Wheatland Housing is through the issue around the memorandum letter that's coming up later in the agenda. Briefly, Marigold has had a regional meeting, and they are awaiting final signing of the agreement with WID, and the Strathmore overnight shelter is busy almost every night at this point.
Thank you for that, Councillor Peterson. Any other reports? Then I believe I need another motion.
I'd move acceptance of the reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've all heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Brings us to item 9, items directly related to council. 9.1, bylaw 18-21, enforcement resource tracking. Jennifer? I believe we have a motion on the, or there was a notice of motion at the November 21st, 2018 regular council meeting from Councillor Montgomery. Councillor Montgomery?
Thank you. So should I make my motion now then? Okay. So it's a little bit different than what's presented here. It's what I sent you. It's that I move that council direct administration to track all costs and resources directed towards the research, creation, management, and enforcement of bylaw 18-21, whether direct or indirect, retroactive to the initiation of the bylaw, and provide a semi-annual report to council detailing the aforementioned and any other related expenditure of resources, as well as any revenues generated as a direct result of this bylaw. And if I could just speak to, the intention is to collect the following information: the number of hours spent on research, creation, review, council time, management, education, and enforcement. So basically, I just want to know the number of hours, and then also the cost of labor and materials spent on that. So on the research, creation, review, council time, management, education, and enforcement of the bylaw, please.
Thank you. We now have the motion on the floor. Is there discussion on that motion? Any comments? Councillor Sobel.
Well, I guess I have two questions. One, I guess, is to Councillor Montgomery, and I'm curious as to what the end goal of this is.
I just would, I would be interested to see, I guess I would like the council to be educated in what the cost of a bylaw is, like what the cost of all these various steps is, because it's very easy for us to have a bylaw presented to us and for us to just kind of pass it, you know, and then be done with it. But there is kind of all there is the resource, I guess, the cost to the town of these bylaws, and I think that we should be judicious in what bylaws we entertain implementing or creating. And I would also recommend we put a limit on this of, let's say, 2 years, you know, so it's not kind of open-ended.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you. I have a follow-up or an additional question, Your Worship. Thank you, and I think this is very interesting, but I'd be interested in know what it's going to cost to figure out what this is going to cost. Because this seems rather labor-intensive and time-consuming. Because this is something that all staff members in our organization may have to contribute to.
Well, yeah, and so I did think about that, and this, I wouldn't recommend we do this for every bylaw that we implement or entertain implementing. I just think that this particular bylaw would be a good example to us and worth monitoring for its value. And yeah, like I said, I wouldn't recommend we do this for everything. And I believe that this will kind of give us a good snapshot anyways of what our resource allocation is when it comes to creating these bylaws. Because at this point, like I don't personally know, and I would I'd be interested to hear if anyone else on the council knew what the cost of a bylaw was.
Mr. Thackeray, did you want to speak to that? Maybe you have some information?
If I may, could I ask council to refer this to committee of the whole next week, and then have Trent, we could speak to it with a bit more background, and maybe we could find out a bit more what you're looking for, and we might be able to help provide you with some good information and a process which could, so we could discuss in more detail what you're looking for. I'm just not totally sure, because Trent sent me some questions, and I think I'd like to just have a little more conversation around it. You can adopt this in principle or something, but I would like to refer it for or propose to council to refer it for further discussion at committee of the whole.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I'm certainly open to discussing it further, so.
Thank you. Just some direction from Ms. Sawatsky. Jen, would we rescind that motion? Is that what we would do?
Your Worship, I would recommend tabling the motion.
Okay.
Yeah. Move to table?
Thank you. I have a motion from Councillor Peterson to table Councillor Montgomery's motion.
And we need a meeting date, please.
And so to the committee of the whole, next Wednesday? 12th. Thank you.
Thank you. You've all heard that motion? Oh, Councillor Sobel?
I know we said committee of the whole, but should it not maybe go to the 19th so that we could vote on it?
So that we don't have to rise and report.
Exactly.
Yes, let's move it to the 19th then.
Is that okay?
We could discuss it at the committee of the whole, though.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we have a motion amended to delay it till the December 19th meeting. All in favor? Motion is carried.
Resources do you want to waste on this?
And that brings us to the end of the public meeting, so I'm looking for a motion, are there any questions between councillors and council statements, councillor? Is there urgent business? Sorry, Ms. Sawatsky.
Your Worship, oh my gosh, Your Worship, the urgent business was brought forward by Councillor Peterson in regards to the Wheatland Housing Management Board. I believe that the issue is that the Hospice Society is looking to be included in the MOU that we have put forth to various villages, the Wheatland County and the Wheatland Housing Management Board. And I believe the direction is for council to make a decision on whether or not they want them included in the MOU. And that's for council's discussion.
Thank you. Is there just, Council Peterson?
Your Worship, I think there are two things involved. The first is exactly as Ms. Swatsky noted. The second is a second memorandum of understanding. I think that still comes under the purpose reporting and funding, where that takes in all of the Wheatland Housing Management Board, the County Wheatland, the villages of Standard, Hazar, Rockyford, the Strathmore Lions Club, and the town of Strathmore agree to support opportunities to develop appropriate housing to meet the needs of our seniors. The second one is to include the Hospice Society as a member of that group. So there are two, actually, and I would at this time, Your Worship, move that we accept and sign both of those and forward them, those requests for support to the Wheatland Management Housing Authority.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Now that we have that motion on the floor, Councillor Cox, did you have comments to add to that?
Well, I'm just confused, but I think I'm clear. We can't have a memorandum of understanding with just Wheatland Housing and the County of Wheatland because...
And the town, because there's everybody else.
That's because there's everyone else. So either we have it just with the town and Wheatland Housing, or you have it with the town and all of those people.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then the second memorandum, sorry, Your Worship,
Would
then the
be
second
adding
memorandum is to
add the
allow the
hospice.
hospice to come
Got it.
into that as a other partner.
Okay, thank you.
Does that motion give you clarification, administration, as to what we're looking for?
Your Worship, if I can just be, for clarification. So the first memorandum of understanding is to include the Hospice Society with the original.
Can I read the letter?
Yes.
So in the letter, so there are three attachments. December 5th, 2018 is for a memorandum of understanding and a letter of support. So attached is a copy of the memorandum of understanding between Wheatland Housing Management and all of the towns in the county of Wheatland, the Strathmore Lions Club as well. So that's the first one. In addition to the attachment is a letter seeking support for the partnership of the Wheatland Housing Body and Wheatland Area Hospice. So one is a memorandum of understanding that just, because in the one we sent to them, it didn't have all of those included. And even though we had at that time moved that, we moved to include them, but somehow when the letter went, they weren't on there. So that's just a correction to what we sent. The second is simply a letter of support for the partnership of Wheatland Housing and the Wheatland Area Hospice. So a letter of support that that everybody who is involved in Wheatland Housing Management Body is supportive of the Wheatland Housing Authority, or the Wheatland Housing Management Body, and the hospice working together towards some common goals. Is that more helpful? So one is an MOU, support for an MOU, one is for a letter of support. And I'd be prepared to go back and make them separate motions if that would help. So, Your Worship, I would move to rescind my first motion. And I would move that Strathmore Town Council approve the memorandum of understanding as noted in paragraph 1 of the December 5th, 2018 letter from Wheatland Housing Management Body.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've heard the motion. All in favor? And that
Thank you, Your
motion is
Worship.
carried.
And my second motion is that the council, Town of Strathmore, write a letter of support for the partnership of Wheatland Housing Body and Wheatland Area Hospice.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. You've heard that motion. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Is there any other urgent business?
Yeah, just, we should add to those motions that they want our response by January 9th.
Thank you. Item 12, questions between councillors and council statements. Are there any?
I have a question.
Councillor.
Your Worship,
Mhm.
we need to vote on the motions?
No, we did.
We did.
We did.
Yeah.
Carried you now. We did.
Councillor Montgomery.
So did we pass the minutes from the last meeting?
Yeah, on the January 21st.
Oh, yeah, I did. Because I meant to mention that,
Spelling mistake.
not this time. I got something a bit more interesting. So at the end of that meeting, I made a motion to extend the meeting to 10:30, but that wasn't included in, I don't know if it matters, but, yeah, so that wasn't included in the minutes.
So then do we need a motion to accept that, to go back and amend that?
Friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment?
I made the motion.
Okay, so Councillor,
I just accepted it as a friendly amendment.
okay, thank you. And then Jen, do we vote on that friendly amendment? No, thank you. I'm getting confused now. I was doing well till recently. Any other questions between councillors and council statements? Okay, thank you. Administrative inquiries, item 13. Do we have any?
Yes, Your Worship. We have 3. Sorry, I have them up here. The first is from Councillor Peterson. The inquiry is, the residents of Lambert Village are once again suffering the impact of late-night noise generated in the north parking lot of Kinsman Lake. Can administration advise what action might be taken by the town of Strathmore to mitigate this nuisance that regularly negatively affects the residents of Lambert Village? And then we have 2 from Councillor Montgomery. And the first is, please report on the savings costs that may be derived by changing the regular scheduled council and committee of the whole meetings to take place during the normal Town of Strathmore business hours. And the second is, please investigate and report on methods of implementing a program that will reward town employees or local citizens for suggestions that produce operational or capital cost savings.
Thank you. Councillor Sobel?
Your Worship, I'm sorry, I had a short statement to make if I could, if we can go back one. I apologize for that.
Okay.
It's like it's 15 seconds. Yesterday morning, as everyone's aware, our mayor's daughter welcomed a young baby boy into the world, and I'd like to congratulate Brianne, Cody, her husband, and of course, Grandpa and Grandma. So congratulations, Pat. It's great.
Thank you for that. I'm still wrapping my head around that whole situation, but I'm excited and the family's excited too. Okay, administrative inquiries are now done. So I'm looking for a motion to go in camera. We have one item under section FOIP section 16, I believe, one to deal with. Motion to go in camera. Councillor Peterson?
So move.
Thank you for that. All in favor? We are going in camera at 9:17.